Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Home Tech Podcast. Jason Griffin here. So happy to have you with us. I am not joined by my partner, Seth Johnson, this week. Seth had a couple of technical difficulties with his computer that precluded him from being able to record a show with me. But I was joined by a good friend of the show and somebody that regular listeners to our podcast here will be very familiar with. It was Kris Gamble, and Kris is the founder of the live install community on Twitter. Would definitely encourage anybody who may not be familiar with that community to go check it out. You can find that in a couple of different ways. You can visit @liveinstall or #liveinstall. Kris is a really great guy, solid voice for the industry. I always enjoy talking to him. He's got some great ideas about how our industry can improve. And like I said, a really good voice and somebody that I would definitely encourage listeners to our show to get connected with. Kris joined us on this episode to talk about a number of different things. We talked about some of the home technology products that his company has really recently started to embrace and had some really good success with. We talked for a little bit about home technology retrofit he's doing at his personal residence. We also shared some thoughts on the recent closure of House, which Seth and I talked about last week, and I think Kris had some interesting insights on that. And lastly, we talked about a couple of trade show events that Kris recently attended. He was out in Manchester for the HD Anywhere X event, which celebrated 10 years in business for HD Anywhere, and they released 10 new products, and Kris talked about that. Sounds like it was a really successful show and very well put together, so I enjoyed hearing his thoughts on that. And from there, we transitioned over into the Essential Install North show. And if you're not familiar, that's a show over there in the UK. It's a two-part show. They do a South and a North. And Kris was on a few months back. We talked about the South show, and he had some really great feedback about it. And so I was actually pretty surprised to hear some of the things he had to say about the show up north. Would definitely encourage you to stay tuned all the way through my interview with Kris, because some of his thoughts there at the end of the show I think were pretty enlightening and might not be what you'd expect. So without Seth here, we're going to skip over our typical news session, a little bit of a format change. We're just going to jump right into our interview with Kris. But before we do that, I do want to send a big thank you to everybody out there listening who has become a patron of the show. If you're not familiar with what that entails, you can head over to HomeTech.fm/support to learn more about that. In short, our Patreon page will allow you to become a financial supporter of the Home Tech Podcast here. You can do that for as little as $1 a month, and we've had quite a few people sign up to do it, and we really do appreciate it. So thank you so much for doing that. And if you're interested in learning more, once again, that URL is HomeTech.fm/support. Also want to mention that if you can't support the show financially, we totally understand. One of the other great ways that you can help support our efforts here would be to leave a review on iTunes. So if you take a few minutes to do that, we'd really appreciate it. We've had quite a few people over the couple of years that we've done the show take the time to go leave us a good review, and it really does go a long ways towards helping more people discover the Home Tech Podcast. So without any further ado, let's jump into my interview here. Again, we had Kris Gamble of the Live Install community join us, and we hope you enjoy. Hey, Kris, welcome back to the Home Tech Podcast. How you doing?
Hi, Jason. It's good to be back on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I don't know if our listeners have ever stopped and done the math on time zones, but I do want to acknowledge that you're joining us consistently at a very odd hour at night and to accommodate our recording schedule here in the States, and we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I've no problems. I just have to set 2 or 3 alarms to wake me up. I've got a history of,
That's right.
Sleeping in for one of our calls.
Well, you just let our listeners in on a little secret. We never quite let that one out of the bag, but yeah, we were able to reschedule and make it happen. But here we are tonight, just you and me. Seth had something come up with his computer, so he's not able to join us, and we're just going to catch up. We've got a couple of events recently that you attended over there in the UK, and I look forward to diving into those and getting your thoughts on them. But before we do it, I just want to catch up with you. I know you've got a few different things going on. We've had you on periodically. What's new? I know you and I were talking before the show tonight about a couple of new lines that it sounds like you're having some real good success with.
Yeah, we spoke previously when I've been on the show about some new systems we've added to our business with a firm eye on retrofit, almost wire-free option for our clients. And the two systems we have added is Crestron Ping and Loxon Air. Two different systems in terms of pricing, but both allowing us to go into homes and without too much disruption, give people this smart home services or the essential services like lighting control, heating control, some multi-room music, enhanced security, and a few of the nice add-ons that a smart home can bring you.
Gotcha. Very cool. I know that a lot of our listeners here in the States will surely be familiar with Crestron Ping. I think LockZone is a little bit less well known. They're starting to get some traction, but I believe a little bit bigger footprint over there in the UK. How do those two stack up to each other, just generally from a very high level price point and functionality wise?
I would say that LockZone may even be about a quarter of the price of Crestron Ping.
Oh, wow.
And if you put the features side by side, you may not see too many differences. What we're aware of, though, with Crestron is that brand recognition is important for a certain demographic of our client base. We see it as an established brand in London, where we do operate. It locks on much lower price point and attracts the person who, not everyone is willing to spend thousands and thousands of pounds on a retrofit smart home system. So we have to offer, both sides of the coin.
Sure. And I know you mentioned, you made a mention of this at least with these systems and focusing on systems that can go in and be retrofitted easily and maybe don't require a whole bunch of new wiring. And you guys have a new, I would say, marketing initiative that you're going to be starting up around that called the 5-Day Smart Home. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's just come through from consumer feedback and speaking to clients that with anything we've done for them, they say it takes a long time, or we've had a lot of disruption to our property to run cables. Is there a quicker option? What if I wasn't renovating my home or doing any refurbishment to it? And they've talked about, in 5 days they could have a whole new kitchen fitted.
Right.
You take the old one out. There's a lot of mess, but there's a few days of disruption to your family. But at the end of the week, you have your nice new kitchen. Could be the same with a redecoration of the property. You put up with the disruption for 3 to 5 days, but hopefully by the end of the week, the decorators have left, the place is cleaned, and you have your nicely, freshly painted home. With a smart home system, we're trying to bring in the 5-day smart home. So the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, for example, might be the disruptive days. And then the Thursday and Friday are the programming and the personalization of the system. And hopefully by Friday, you're leaving with, a home that has some smart enhancements. And the customer is waving goodbye to you maybe for another year. And you might go in the following year for another 3 to 5 days and add some more smart home features. So we're not taking over their home.
Sure.
Which we feel that happens a lot. You kind of take over, move in. Why can't we shorten that process and retrofit systems, wire-free systems? Are really the only way that can provide that service.
Right. Well, yeah, I think the market's evolving in a way that's definitely become more viable now. The technology exists to get in and do that much quicker than we used to, and I think it's definitely smart to leverage that. It's a win-win. The clients don't want all that disruption, and they don't want you in their house indefinitely, and the HomeTech Pro or the integrator has a vested interest in getting in and getting out and hopefully collecting a check, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense.
The main things that we see, if it's cash flow for our business, would be much, much better because we're invoicing, every 5 days rather than stage payments on longer projects. It's just not always efficient, and there's long periods where between invoicing. So
yeah, yep, huge battle in our industry, no doubt, and you got to have a good mix of those bigger jobs and the smaller jobs to keep the cash flow coming in, and,
sure.
And the big jobs help with the overall revenue. So definitely important to have that mix, and I love the 5-day smart home. Definitely catchy, and I think that's something that'll really resonate with consumers. So you'll have to keep us posted on how that goes. I know you and I were talking here, and you've got another line that you've been working with, and we've talked about on the show before, and that's HDL. And I know you're continuing to do some work with them. What's the latest with them?
Yeah, HDL is a system. HDL Bus Pro is a system we use extensively on the larger projects, the new construction or the major renovation projects where we've rerun all the lighting, wiring, controlled the heating system from scratch and been a part of the design of it. We've had some on-site support from HDL UK this week, which is great, that they commit that time to their dealers on-site. And we've been working on the user interface on their new touchscreens. We've been implementing some new features that we can give to our customers with the use of sensors, timers, different sensors, so humidity, temperature, presence, absence, things that we have been using a lot, but we're trying to go further with our projects so that sensors are playing a more active part, and not just the traditional movement or no movement or temperature control and the heating. We're trying to get all these sensors doing multiple functions when the homeowner is home or away.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned that they're doing on-site time with you. Is that something that HDL just kind of does as a standard practice, or is it maybe for particularly large installations, or what's the deal with that? I love hearing when manufacturers are doing that.
To some extent, we requested it on this occasion, but we know that they regularly do provide on-site support. We did request it this time, just because we had a succession of projects coming out with the same new touchscreens, which we've managed to upsell to some extent to clients, and we just wanted to be prepared for that. We didn't want to, slow down our installations because we're trying to get used to these new touchscreens, which will make programming a little bit longer, but we're now prepared for that. So we proactively seeked out some on-site support.
Well, like I said, I think that's great when manufacturers do go to that effort to get out there. I think it just really helps them get that real-time feedback. And I know as somebody who works in the business and works more on the sales and operational side and not so much out in the field, I know how easy it is to lose touch with some of those technical challenges and some of the actual nuts and bolts of the installation and where some of those potential landmines can lie. And so I think it's really important when manufacturers are willing to get out there and back up their dealers. And so, like I said, I just love hearing that. Speaking of being hands-on and nuts and bolts, I know you're working on your own house, doing a little bit of smart home renovations in your own place. Tell us how that's going.
Yeah, my wife and I recently purchased a 1960s period home in the UK, and it's pretty much untouched. It's maybe had a refurb in the 80s, which was maybe not the UK's greatest period for interior design, but we're starting to peel back the 1980s finesse that it had, and we're putting our own touch on it, but we're not being too disruptive. So I'm not running miles of cables. I'm not taking down walls or anything. So we're doing a retrofit smart home, which ties in with, I don't think it's going to take me 5 days.
I was just about to ask.
I'm doing it. Yeah, I am doing it in the evenings and weekends, and whilst also trying to commit time to my family as well. But we're going with Crestron Ping, and we're having a lot of fun, room by room, just adding some lighting control. We've got the heating under control now with Ping, and finding it super easy to set up. Which makes us even more excited about projects that we've got it coming up with our customers. They're going to be staggered at the speed of how quickly things, once it's installed, how quickly things get paired up, and how easy it is for the homeowner to personalize their smart home. That's the most exciting thing about Crestron Ping for us, is
right.
Customer interaction with their system is extreme. It's an extreme level that we've not had before with other systems.
Well, I will definitely be keeping an eye out. I'm assuming you're going to post some pictures of your installation there on the live install hashtag. One would assume.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. A couple other little sort of personal catch-up things we want to touch on before we jump into a couple of these recent trade show events that you went to. I know that you mentioned you recently did a couple of training courses with Crestron and Leviton, and I think the timing of that is great. We just had the public story break about the house closure, the Home Automation University here in the States that had a pretty short run and closed down. Seth and I talked about that a little bit on last week's show as well, and would just love to get your thoughts on the recent trainings you were at and just sort of where the industry is at in terms of education and training as a whole.
Yeah, we committed some time in September and October to do some training. Spent 3 days at Crestron's facilities in Surrey, just outside London, and we've started the journey with Crestron through all their training courses from basic level, and over the years, I expect it to be a long journey. We'll progress right the way through all their training courses. Very impressed with their facilities, as you would expect. They're not just dealing with residential customers; they're also training commercial installers who are dealing with multi-million-pound projects. So the facilities are, very, very good. Very impressed. So it was, you saw value in the days off because the caliber of training was very high. With the Leviton training, that's an additional system we've added, but just for to address a gap in our services that were based around security. We wanted a system that we were more in control of to do intruder detection, smoke alarms, heat detection, things like that. And Leviton was an installer-friendly product with their Omni controller system. And we've got projects active now where we're using Leviton Omni for those very things I mentioned. Training again, done in just outside London, 2-day training course, hands-on, very practical, which is different from the Crestron training, which a bit more classroom-based and presentation style. Leviton was literally within 15 minutes, screwdriver, stripping back cables, starting to...
Putting you to work.
Yeah, it was good. It's good to get that contrast on training courses. And the other people on the course, after speaking to them on break times and after each day, they were an electrical contractor business, and they'd sent 5 of their guys on this course, and they were using it as their default security system. And it was, it's good. These courses are good for networking with other people. We exchange cards, and we've kept in touch since because they're a large electrical contractor business in London, which is perfect for us because we like to subcontract out work in London. We don't try and do it all ourselves in-house. So it's great networking as well as valuable training.
Yeah, that is a nice a side benefit to the in-person training. And I know that I've every time I've had the opportunity to go do any sort of in-person training myself, I've always come away with at least a handful of business cards and new contacts, and I definitely always look forward to that. Speaking of the in-person training and the hands-on stuff, I know that was a big bet for House, and they were really had gone all in and built a really, really big facility here in my hometown of Denver. And, I was on air when this first came out, and I was skeptical about it from the beginning just because of some of the ways they were going about it that we won't get into here. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts, maybe a little bit more of an outsider's perspective on the House closure. And I know that we were having a very lively dialogue in our Slack channel, The Hub, and in particular Bruno from Krika, who's part of that Slack channel, had made some interesting comments about the challenges involved with training for integrators and what maybe the industry needs to do to address those. So I know there's quite a few things there I teed up for you, but just give me your thoughts in general.
Yeah, I remember the launch of the House Training Academy, the university, and was really excited about it. I think at the time I said, we need something like this in the UK. I've often felt that you've got your manufacturer training courses, which are great, and you'll always do them. But I felt it was almost a hybrid of your traditional CEDIA training mixed with some vendor training. So as well as, talking about equipment, they were telling you how to run your business or trying to help you run your business better, project management, staff management, all the things that in my position as the business owner and a technical member of our company, I would love that, dual training opportunity where if I just go to CEDIA, it is very it's business focused, and I don't have another option to do that. I can go to CEDIA and then I have my manufacturer training. House seemed to blend both, which I thought was much better for my business. So it's a shame to see it. What Bruno brought up in your social media platform was people are too busy. They're not running their business correctly. They're chasing after clients. They're not implementing these remote. Yeah, they're not implementing these remote monitoring services that are available. They're doing a lot of it for free. I'm guilty of it. I'll hold my hand up. I'm, an hour before this call, I'm just quickly remotely logging into somebody's system to make a change. Now, that's great. I did it remotely. If I couldn't solve that remotely, I'm rescheduling my diary to go out and keep that client happy and to make a minor change that may only take 1 hour, but yeah, we are guilty of it, and we're all hiding from the big topic is, are we running our businesses right, especially the small ones?
Yeah. No, it's a very, very important conversation. And obviously Bruno, for our listeners who aren't familiar, is the founder of Krika, which is a remote systems management tool. And there's a bunch of them out there. It's been a big topic of ours on the show here recently with IHG and Oversee Pro and Domots and Digital Butler. It's a growing space, and it's definitely one that I personally believe is hugely important to the future of our industry. And I've got a ton of thoughts about that. I mean, we could probably just do a whole episode about the business of RSM and why I think it's important. I think what gets missed a lot in that conversation, there's a lot of focus on RMR and getting that recurring revenue in the door. And, I do think that's important. I just think that it misses part of the conversation, which is that the service doesn't in and of itself have to, the RMR portion of it at least, doesn't have to be a huge profit center at first in order for it to be a win. I think that what it does is sets a level of expectation with our clients. Deploying these RSM solutions gives us the ability to remotely fix problems, like you said, and not have to kind of disrupt our whole day and reschedule things just for a small fix or programming change. And it just sort of shifts the model and shifts the perception with our customers about the real value that we're providing. And so I do think it all ties together. It's hard, particularly like you said, for the small business owners to find time for training because there is so much, firefighting and running around that goes on. And so hopefully the industry will continue to evolve and embrace those sort of solutions. And I'm optimistic about that. I think there's a lot of great tools for it. You had one other note that we had put on our agenda here to talk about, and that's a tech forum, CEDIA tech forum that's coming up in London, and a vote on the CEDIA US and EMEA merger. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the tech forum's an event that CEDIA put on in various locations around the UK. It's a new way of engaging with their members and offering training and networking in one place, which we enjoy that. We're big fans of that format. Also, at the event, they will have their AGM, and the big discussion point with the AGM is our vote as a member of CEDIA to give the green light for the merger between CEDIA UK or Europe and CEDIA US, and we will become members of CEDIA US. Our membership will transfer, and we will become one big family.
Yeah, and I know that you were mentioning in our Slack channel, I believe, that you're a fan of the idea, right?
I think so. I think it's a much we see much more joined up thinking between all the, on an international level. There's so many similarities between my business in the UK and somebody else's business in the US. At the moment, we're not sharing our thoughts. We are quite detached. I want to know more from US business owners. It's a mature market there. It's a more established industry. Are there better regulations and governance of our industry in the US? There's definitely not in the UK. It's a man in a van with tools running around being a smart home installer. Going into people's houses and is it the same? Okay, right.
Yeah. Well, and sadly, quite honestly, yeah, a lot of it is. Yeah. And hopefully, maybe by the two organizations coming together, there's a bit more of a brain trust and we can kind of figure out it. It goes back to the last thing we were talking about. And I just do believe that we're working in a maturing industry. And I do think that by and large, the industry is evolving and it's just going to be a slow process. But yeah, I'm a fan of the merger as well. And quite honestly, Seth had chimed in on the Slack channel, and I have to agree with him. I actually didn't realize that CEDIA UK or CEDIA Europe was operating under a licensing agreement previously, and that it wasn't in some way at least really one organization to begin with. And so I was actually surprised to hear about the merger, but I can't really think of anything that would dissuade me from wanting that to happen. To me, it seems like a good idea.
Yeah, my only concerns would be the regional focus. Will that be diluted slightly in that maybe decisions are made at a more global, with a global view, and does that alienate the very regional domestic installer rather than the company that crosses borders and does these inspirational international projects? The majority of the industry doesn't do that. It's certainly the message that's put out there in all their marketing. It's always the luxury home. It's the yacht. It's the huge property. But their member base, certainly in the UK, has grown rapidly in the last 2 years, where it's lots and lots of small businesses who operate within a 30-mile radius, who do properties where the client spend on home tech is only sub 20,000 UK pounds. So that message is not being conveyed by CEDIA globally. I've always said that. What I see in their marketing brochures and case studies is not what I do. So, my projects are very different. So I've always been concerned that there's not a wider, shop window for our industry. It's very luxury, high-end focused. But hey, I'll probably be talking about the same thing 2 or 3 years from now, that we're still not getting exposure at the grassroots level.
Yeah, like I said, a slow process, but you keep fighting the good fight, and I know you've got a big voice in the industry, and people do listen when you speak up, and I think you're a great advocate for a lot of these changes that we're advocating for on our show quite often. And so we'll keep fighting the good fight. But let's jump in here. We're going to move through these fairly quick, but we've had you on to talk about trade shows in the past, and we've really done a deep dive on a lot of different topics that you covered there. But I know you've been out to a couple recently, and the first one we want to touch on was an event by HD Anywhere called the X event, and I checked out the website, and they had the keynote up there on a video, and it looked like a very well put together event. Give us the high level overview. Where was it held, and when did you attend, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, the HD Anywhere X event was a celebration held in Manchester. It was a celebration of 10 years of HD Anywhere as a company. Kris, you've had him in the show, co-founder of the business. He started the business when he was in university in Manchester. To celebrate the 10 years and the X, the Roman numeral X, they launched 10 new products, which was exciting. To see them roll out one new product after another was was great fun. They held the event in a cinema, so they had a private screen. So the keynote was on the big screen. We sat there with free HD Anywhere popcorn, and we were ushered to our seats. It was all very mysterious. And then Kris appeared, drew back the virtual curtain on the 10 new products. And the products ranged from new extender sets, so just point-to-point HDMI distribution options of various different features, lengths, and video resolution. Launched new video matrices, so the 4x4 and the 8x8 configuration systems, which are very popular. And like any keynote especially by Apple, there was always one more thing, and they launched their new control platform. So you do not need to go out and buy learning remote controls or try and use the very cheap remote control that they often put in the box of these video matrices. They have a tablet-based or smartphone-based app. They have a database, a cloud database of IR codes for all the major brands, set-top boxes, and you can piece together the control system, as part of the matrix. As part of the matrix, you don't have to go out and buy 4 or 8 Logitech Harmonies or, sit and program those. It's all built in one system, which that will evolve, that will get better. That was exciting, yeah.
Very interesting. So it's actually a full-fledged control system with IR codes and everything, so you can use it to control third-party devices like cable boxes and TVs.
Yeah,
Am I understanding that correctly?
If you had a Sony Blu-ray player or an Apple TV box or Roku, they have the codes. So you just say that's input 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can even control the screen, your output source. They'll have all the codes for your Samsung, Panasonic, LG screens, for example. And it's good that you're able to give a customer a high-ticket item, which it is. It's often one of the higher-priced items in a quotation. And you're not also bundling £700, £800, £900 worth of remote controls with it as well, which in some cases can double the price.
Right. Yeah, it's very true. I think it's a smart play by HD Anywhere. I know that, I've designed systems in the past where I've felt like having some sort of video distribution might be of value for any number of reasons. But if it's a limited budget, that introducing that video distribution can be sort of a threshold, because not only are you, like you said, introducing that one high ticket item, which would be your matrix and your extenders and all that, but on top of that, you got to have a way to control it all. And so that, like you said, could easily double the price, or at the very least add another 25 or 30% on top of that. So I think it's a smart move, and I'll have to check out that product. It sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah. So from our takeaway as a business, we're thinking, if we were to specify a 4x4 system, we're able to give 4 rooms of audio and video with a control system for maybe a ticket price of sub £2,000, which that's a good option for the homeowner who may have some existing Cat 5e or Cat 6 cabling. You only need 4 runs of cable, and you can roll out a 4-zone AV system with control. Right.
Very cool. So it sounds like it was a great event. What was the overall impression on dealers? Did you feel like it was a successful event for them?
Yeah, they all loved it. They were excited about attending an event launch. They enjoyed the networking afterwards. There was the obligatory beers and monkey nuts.
Of course. Monkey? I was just about to ask.
There wasn't monkey nuts, just beer.
That's ISE only.
Yeah, just beer. But yeah, good fun. Good to catch up with people. It spilled out into another venue after the event as well. So
Very cool. And did most people kind of stay? Did you stay in Manchester for the night?
Yeah, I stayed the night before, and then the next day, it led into the Essential Install Live North show, also in Manchester.
Okay.
Where HD
Got it.
Anywhere.
I didn't realize they were in the same place. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So HD Anywhere probably planned that. I would assume.
Yeah.
I didn't connect those dots, but that makes sense.
They were the show sponsor as well. The overall sort of main sponsor of the trade show that happened the following day. They had the biggest stall at the show. A huge inflatable stand, which stood out from the rest, which were all the usual sort of booths. They had an HD Anywhere inflatable, which you had to go inside. It was like going inside one of those bouncy castles.
Bouncy castle. That's funny.
Yeah, you didn't have to take your shoes off.
Sounds like it got people talking.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. That's engagement with your customers at its best. You've got people talking about it. Now, on the flip side, overall the show, the Essential Install show, wasn't great. There wasn't that engagement with the visitors. There was nothing to hold them. There was no seminars. There was no training opportunities. So the feedback that we heard, in our circles, was, that was disappointing. I may or may not go next year, and that's not good if people aren't attending these shows.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I know that this show is a pretty big deal out there in the UK. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the same one we've had you on previously where we talked about it's like I don't want to say 2-part show, but there's Essential Install South and North, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And so this was the North one, and I know last time we had you on, you talked about the South one, and I think you had generally good things to say about it. So this is an established show, and I think just generally, I'm curious to know where you feel like they could have done a better job at engaging with their audience.
I think the organizers of the show, to some extent, did their job. Good venue, easy to get to, well advertised, free, which is a big draw. If something's free, why not go along to it? They got a reasonable amount of exhibitors at the show, that the names that you would expect. There was a few missing, and that's disappointing when you don't see some of the bigger names there, whether it's Control 4 or Loxon. Crestron, definitely wouldn't exhibit at these shows. So that's disappointing when you don't see the major names. But most of the distributors are there that sell multiple brands, so the sort of larger wholesalers or distributors, they're there with their products. So you can see the latest 4K screens, the latest matrices. There's presence there from Sonos distributors. So you can see quite a lot of the show. I do feel what was missing this time was exhibitors were, I felt, lazy. There was nothing apart from HD Anywhere. No exhibitor to us stood out.
Just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, almost tabletop. Couple of products sat on a table and some brochures. For goodness sake, you got to engage with these companies. They're going to spend, tens of thousands of pounds every year. You only do 2 shows a year. Make the effort. Now, that will probably come back to bite me. Somebody will say, Kris, what are you having to pop at us for? We're trying to do our best. But I didn't feel they did. Didn't feel they gave their best at all. Lazy. That was my takeaway.
Yeah. Well, you got to call it like you see it. And I think that it can be easy for, manufacturers to show up and just like I said, kind of go through the motions. But even though this show, Essential Install Live, was free for home tech pros to attend, you're giving up time, and there's a definite value to that. If you're spending your time there, that's time that you could be spending completing projects or landing new ones. And so even though you're not necessarily shelling out cash to be there, you're spending your time there, and that's the most valuable thing any of us have. And so I'm with you. I think that it sounds like I would have been disappointed as well. Would have liked to have seen a little bit more effort put into it by the exhibitors and kind of get some more energy. It sounds like it was just kind of a low energy show floor, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly what the takeaway from the show was. It just lacked any sparkle, and it's a shame because you're putting everyone in one big room. Maybe change the format. Less booths, more a whole day networking with some keynote speakers and some seminars. Maybe that's the format for the North Show. Maybe a bit greater engagement and participation from both the visitors and the exhibitors. But it's a shame because for the guys up in the north of the UK and people that travelled over from Northern Ireland, came across on flights. I know people that drove 5 to 6 hours to get there. The people came, so you've got to put on a show for them. So yeah, disappointing. But are they spoiled by the razzmatazz of ISE, the glitz and glamour of CEDIA US, even the Essential Install South show, much bigger, maybe similar travel times to get to it. So maybe people are just saying, well, if I'm going to do a show, I'll do one and I'll go to the main one. Exhibitors might be in the same. You have the same thoughts. I'll put all our eggs in that one and just have a downscaled stand for the Northern show.
Quite possible. Well, hopefully, somebody's listening who might be able to take some action and improve that show next year. I don't doubt it. Like I said, you've got a good platform in the industry with your live install community, and definitely commend you for the work that you've done in creating and fostering that vibrant community of engaged people who are really invested in seeing this industry mature and evolve for the better. And so once again, just really want to thank you for taking the time to come on, Kris. We always appreciate you joining us. If there's anybody listening who might want to connect with you, maybe ask a follow-up question or two, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Definitely via Twitter. Live Install's Twitter handle is @LiveInstall. To catch our attention, use our hashtag. #LiveInstall will put your business in a new virtual shop window. It's a great way to show off your installations, and what comes along with it organically is you will start to network better with the industry.
Absolutely. All right, Kris, well, we'll let you go. Get some sleep over there, and we'll look forward to having you on again soon.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, take care.